In spite of winning 2 national titles, Woody Hayes entered the 1968 season under fire from both fans and media alike. With his career in the balance, Woody responded with a season that would usher in a decade of unprecedented Buckeye dominance. But from his most glorious heights, Hayes would suffer a crushing fall from grace, only to be reborn in the twilight of his days. Join us now for part 2 of our special look at an American football legend, Woody Hayes.
At the start of the 1968 season, even the most ardent Ohio State fan could not have predicted the historic campaign that was about to unfold. Less than 1 year before, the Buckeyes looked like a program on the brink of collapse, their legendary coach a relic of days gone by.
In 1967, they were hanging Woody in effigy at the corner of 15th and High.
I'm not so sure I really recognized the pressure that Woody was under, but I knew that he had to win more football games or they were going to get rid of him.
Woody's trouble stemmed from the school's decision to decline the Buckeyes' 1961 Rose Bowl bid. The ensuing fallout fell mostly on recruiting, forcing Hayes to adjust his 1967 enlistment strategy.
That was the first year that Woody went out of state, and he got some pretty good football players.
You could go across the line through the backfield, offense and defense, and there were all Ohioans, high school All-Americans at almost every position.
The class became known as the Super Sophomores, and their inaugural campaign would end in perfection, a 10-0 record and the consensus national championship. The season saved Woody's job and opened the door to a new era in Ohio State football.
I really believe that the 1968 season was kind of the beginning of maybe the new modern era in all of Ohio State football, the first Big Ten title in 7 years. Woody Hayes really had his greatest success at Ohio State from that point forward.
This 10-year stretch saw Woody's Buckeyes claim a piece of 9 Big Ten titles while playing in 6 Rose Bowls. It was also the time of the 10-year war, a high-stakes showdown against the team Hayes derisively referred to as the School Up North.
Woody would always say just bad things about Michigan and wouldn't even say the name Michigan.
I've heard the stories of him having to go into the state of Michigan with someone. They're driving back towards Ohio and their gas tank is nearly empty, and he doesn't want to buy gas in the state of Michigan because he doesn't want to support their tax system.
I remember one year at Michigan, a practice during the week, Woody had police on the top of Lincoln and Memorial Towers during that week because he had told us that Bo was watching our plays, and he truly believed it.
Everything that week was just at a different level. You know, the intensity, the practices, the tension from the players to the coaches, everyone involved. And that came from Coach Hayes.
After the game was over, one of the press people asked Woody Hayes, you know, Coach, you're ahead 48-14. Why did you go for 2? And he says, by God, because we couldn't go for 3.
He had an obsession with Michigan. You know, you got to beat Michigan.
He'd tell me, you start to work on Michigan right now, you work on Michigan today, you work on Michigan next week.
Woody's maize and blue fixation was grounded in a simple reality. To coach in Columbus, you had to beat the team from Ann Arbor.
He knew that the Michigan game was the game. If you lost that football game, that was a losing season. Even if you were 9-1, that was a losing season.
When Hayes came to Ohio State in 1951, Ohio State had won only 12 of the previous 47 games against Michigan. Hayes was 16-11-1 against the Wolverines, and during the 24-year period from 1952 through 1975, Michigan won only 7 of those 24 games.
The legendary rivalry reached its zenith when Michigan, looking to regain the upper hand, hired one of Woody's dearest disciples.
Woody and Bo were great friends. Now, that's like you asking your best friend, and he's going to go up and coach against you. Now, you know you can't let him beat you.
In Bo's first year at Michigan, 1969, Michigan pulled off one of the greatest upsets of all time, defeating Woody Hayes' 1969 team 24-12. Ohio State at that time was riding a 22-game winning streak, the longest in all of Ohio State football, and that set the stage for the next 9 years.
In coaching, I was probably Woody's closest friend. And, but during the 10-year war that we competed, we never talked. I never called him on the phone, he never called me.
When Woody had his heart attack, he woke up in University Hospital. And Woody always said, I thought I was looking at an angel. He said, I saw Bo Schembechler. There was Bo sitting at the end of his bed. They loved one another. They had great respect for one another. But on the football field, you threw all that aside.
Wayne Woodrow Hayes was born on February 14, 1913, in tiny Clifton, Ohio. Hayes' father, Wayne Benton Hayes, was a self-educated teacher who emphasized the values of scholarship, hard work, and toughness, values his youngest son took readily to heart.
Woody Hayes grew up mostly in Newcomerstown, Ohio, where he was captain of his high school football team. And Woody always loved academics. And I think part of that came from the fact that his father, Wayne Hayes, was superintendent of schools in Newcomerstown. I would think Woody Hayes learned some of his leadership skills from his father, but also his toughness.
He grew up with a father who let him and his brother Ike box. You know, anytime they didn't get along or they had a fight, they got boxing gloves and they went at it and released all their pressure to each other, and everybody in the neighborhood would come and watch these two guys fight.
After graduation from high school, Woody went to Denison University, where he was an excellent student. He majored in English and history. He was a tackle on the football team and played outfield for the Denison University baseball team and graduated in 1935.
After college, Hayes took a teaching job in the village of Mingo Junction, where he doubled as an assistant coach for the high school football team. He planned to become a lawyer, but when his admission to Ohio State's law school was postponed, Hayes accepted another assistant's job in nearby New Philadelphia. Just one season later, he was named head coach. Law school would have to wait. In his first two seasons, Hayes went 18-1-1, but his third team won only once, and many of the players complained about their coach's hard-driving methods. Uncertain about his future, Woody enlisted in the Navy 5 months before Pearl Harbor and the outbreak of World War II.
And then Hayes entered the service. He became the lieutenant commander in the Navy, and I think he would say that his value to this country was far greater being a lieutenant commander and commanding 2 ships in the Pacific during World War II than it probably was as a football coach.
While stationed at sea, Woody received a letter from his college alma mater, who made the former high school coach an unexpected offer.
Denison University decided that they would offer him the head coaching position at Denison following the end of World War II. Of course, Denison, like many universities in this country, had given up football during World War II because of a shortage of male students on campus. And so when World War II was over, then he took over as head coach of the Denison University football program in the fall of 1946.
With a 2-6 record, Woody's first season was hardly a success, and his boot camp tactics caused a near mutiny within the team. But his next 2 teams went undefeated, and an offer to coach Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, soon followed. At Miami, Hayes replaced the popular Sid Gilman, and his arrival came as a shock to the team's returning players.
He was a bear. Woody came in with a system that was entirely different that we had to learn. And the first year was a disaster.
But just as he had at Denison, Woody bounced back with an outstanding sophomore season.
The next year, we had a great football team. We beat Cincinnati, who was going to the Sun Bowl at the time, 28-0, the same day that Michigan played Ohio State in the Snow Bowl.
The Buckeyes' Snow Bowl defeat led to the firing of Coach Wes Fessler. Suddenly, Woody was a candidate for one of college football's biggest jobs. But to most fans, Woody Hayes was an unknown entity, and public sentiment quickly focused on a previous Buckeye legend.
There was a lot of interest among a lot of the Ohio State fans and some of the very, very prominent supporters to bring Paul Brown back to Ohio State. In fact, there was a big campaign with buttons and bumper stickers, BBB, Bring Back Brown.
There was a push for certain things, and in the football team it was for Paul Brown because of his reputation as a great football coach from Massillon, Ohio, and coming to Ohio State in the early 40s and bringing a national title to the team and having all of the background of pro football, and he was very much interested in the job.
But in spite of Brown's very public support, the Ohio State administration passed and offered the job to Missouri's Don Farrow.
Don Farrow came into Columbus, accepted the Ohio State position, and Dick Larkins, the athletic director, had to think that, well, this is really good because we have a very prominent college coach now that will take over the head coaching job from Wes Fessler.
He accepted the job, went home and talked to his wife, and his wife was a little apprehensive about Columbus and the high pressure things that were going on.
Well, 3 days later, Larkins got a call from Farrow that he had changed his mind and had decided to stay at Missouri after all. So Larkins got his athletic selection committee back together, and that selection committee made two decisions. The first decision was not to interview any more candidates, but to make their second choice from among the other candidates who they had not selected. The second decision they made was to offer the job to WoodyHayes.
For many, the selection was seen as a letdown, and expectations for the 38-year-old Hayes were decidedly downcast. Just the latest coach buried in Columbus's sideline cemetery.
When WoodyHayes took the head coaching job at Ohio State in 1951, Ohio State had, in my opinion, very rightfully earned the dubious distinction of being the graveyard of coaches. Hayes was the sixth different head coach within a span of just 12 seasons.
Coach Hayes took over an awful job at Ohio State in 1951 and came very close in those early years, as everybody is aware, to losing that job. People wanted him out of town as quick as they wanted him in town.
A mediocre three-year record of 16-9-1 had Hayes looking like Ohio State's next coaching casualty. But the 1954 season would change everything for Woody, for the Buckeyes, and for the history of college football. Hired in 1951, WoodyHayes entered the 1954 season faced with mounting pressure from Buckeye fans and local would-be power brokers.
In Woody's first 3 years at Ohio State, the Buckeyes were 16-9-1, and 1954 was kind of a make-or-break year for him. A lot of the Ohio State fans were thinking another mediocre season and Hayes will be gone and we'll replace him with another coach.
The people downtown had put some pressure on, and Ernie Godfrey, who was one of the coaches, came to him and said, the downtown people want you to step down. And his famous words are, the hell with the people downtown, I'm not stepping down for anybody.
With his heels dug in, Hayes delivered one of Ohio State's greatest seasons ever. Led by halfback Howard Hopalong Cassidy, the Buckeyes picked fifth in the Big Ten, shocked the conference and the country, posting a 10-0 record en route to the school's second national championship. The stunning season was a critical turning point in Woody's fledgling career, a fact he readily acknowledged.
Years later, WoodyHayes often said that Hopalong Cassidy in that 1954 team probably saved his job at Ohio State, because had the Buckeyes been about a 50-50 team in 1954, chances are he might have been replaced going into the 1955 season.
Hayes kept his job and his program began to roll. In 1955, the Buckeyes won another Big Ten title, and Hopalong Cassidy was awarded the Heisman Trophy. The Buckeyes' success brought Hayes a newfound fame, as well as unwanted scrutiny. A 1955 magazine article in which Woody admitted loaning money to players resulted in an embarrassing one-year probation and a growing wariness of the media.
I think what it came to is there was like 3 or 4 players he gave $5 or something to, and somebody told on him because he did that.
They asked him, he just told him, yeah, he didn't lie about it, he didn't try to cover it up. He says, yeah, I loaned him some money, he needed this, boom, boom, and he's gonna pay me back.
I don't think they found anything big, but it was his heart, you know, if somebody needed something, that's the way always Woody was.
Hayes was not aware that loaning money to players was against an NCAA rule, and when he had so openly shared that with the reporter, and when the reporter put that in his column, I think he felt like he'd been violated a little bit.
But Woody rebounded the very next season when the 1957 Buckeyes won another national title. Hayes was named National Coach of the Year, and the stain of probation quickly gave way to a renewed sense of honor and prestige. To the delight of fans, the Buckeyes were now seen as a perennial football power. But that was an image some on campus could do without. In 1961, the issue came to a head when the school's faculty council denied the team's Rose Bowl invitation. The episode sparked a campus-wide protest and brought to light a growing rift between Woody and some Ohio State administrators.
Well, there are always some people in the campus that are resentful of football. They don't like the game, they don't understand the game. And at that time, probably there was some of that toward football in the program and toward Woody.
There was a tremendous jealousy against Woody because in those days, if you said Ohio State, in the same breath, you said WoodyHayes.
And they wanted to de-emphasize Woody. Woody was quite a powerful person. Even the governor came to see him and would wait to see him. So it was not unusual that a lot of the faculty there thought he was too big for his britches.
Faculty members who opposed the trip cited growing concerns over the increasing influence of corporate commercialism in amateur athletics. But the crux of the controversy centered on perceived tensions between athletics and academics, subjects Woody felt went hand in hand.
It's people like that who didn't understand that Woody was a regular attender at the faculty club.
He came from a family of where education was very important. And Woody was not going to let you get away with less than your best ability, and that included the classroom.
There was nobody who was more strict with his players than WoodyHayes as far as getting grades were concerned.
Many years after some players had finished their football careers, Hayes would still be on them to come back to Ohio State and finish up and get their degrees.
And he would call too. If guys left, he would call them and say, when are you coming back to graduate? You can't get out of here. You only got 8 more hours. He'd stay on you. And he would force players to be attorneys.
Every time I would see him, he didn't care, how you doing, what's going on. He would always ask me, have you enrolled in law school yet? Over and over and over again. And finally I told him, I said, Coach, I don't think I want to be a lawyer. And he says, I don't care. You need to go to law school.
He considered himself a professor, a teacher first, and preached that, harped that with his kids.
So I think from that standpoint that the academic people were a little bit off base really in trying to make such a strong separation.
Hayes accepted the faculty council's decision, but bitter feelings remained, and as the 60s unfolded, the emotional episode left lingering effects.
The biggest thing was it was much, much more difficult now for WoodyHayes and his staff to go into Ohio and recruit the real outstanding Ohio high school football players to come to Ohio State.
It did hurt recruiting because there were coaches around the Big Ten who would say you don't want to go to Ohio State because you never know if they win the Big Ten whether they're going to be able to go to the Rose Bowl or not because of the feeling between the faculty and the athletic department.
Several subpar recruiting classes took their toll, and the 1966 Buckeyes limped to a 4-5 record. A 2-3 start the following season had many fans calling for Woody's job.
We always assumed that Woody was above anything, that Woody was beyond being touched. But you couldn't ignore the signs. I mean, there were floating signs around the stadium. Woody's gone. I think one of the sports announcers called for his firing.
But that's what Columbus is like. And they demanded the best, and they weren't happy that we were getting beat by some of the teams that we were getting beat by.
If you don't win at Ohio State, you're going to have plenty of heat, you're going to have airplanes flying around the stadium, and you're going to have all kinds of stuff like that.
With his critics circling in, Woody appeared headed for early retirement. But just as he had done in 1954, Hayes bounced back from the brink with a season for the ages. 1968 would see the Buckeyes back on top, leaving a triumphant WoodyHayes standing poised to enter the golden age of his brilliant career.
As much as anyone, WoodyHayes understood the fickle nature of coaching in Columbus. When asked why he never accepted gifts, Hayes quipped, "They give you a Cadillac one year, and the next they give you the gas to get out of town." Woody responded to that truth the only way he knew how, by working hard and winning games. Join us next week for part 2 of our special look at WoodyHayes. Until then, for Buckeye Classics, I'm Archie Griffin. Thanks for watching.